Hello, my name is Pedro Leonardo, and I'm a director of product management at Yotascale. So now I'm going to introduce the product, get into more details about how the product works, what capabilities we have, and after that, we're going to give you a very in-depth demo. So Jeff is going to walk us through all of the details that we are going to talk about. So just to bring back this slide that Asim already presented so that we can double click a little bit. So the first pillar about the product is really the observability. It's really getting visibility into what's going on in the network. So we are now a multi-cloud platform. So we allow you to get data from Amazon AWS, from Microsoft Azure, as well as container support. So all of the different flavors of containers. And so the idea of this kind of single pane of glass is that as teams are now migrating some of them into microservices and containers, now there's like an additional complexity of how do we understand who is using what and how you get really good visibility about that. So we kind of provide this ability to give you that visibility across all of the services or containers, regardless of how you are developing your code. The second piece here that's very important as well is that as we get different teams that are looking at cost, oftentimes it is the head of engineering. So Asim gave a few examples, but it can also be a FinOps leader, right? It can be a business owner. So there are different personas, different people in the organization that they have a different interest in understanding what's going on, right? And so they want to know and they want to be able to understand the language of what is presented to them. So it might be that for a finance person, they care more about department level costs, or they care more about COGS, like what are our costs to sell our services. But if you are a head of engineering, you care about the actual services, their performance. Am I going more on a container route? I'm still sticking to traditional services. So you want to get a slicing and dicing of data in a different way. So that's why it's very important that you are able to give you this kind of multi-dimensional or multiple lens of visibility. So that's kind of the area of visibility that allows us to get there. And we're going to go into details about how do we get that visibility? What are the components, the things that we need to know to get to the level of visibility that we need. The second point is really the predictability, right? I want to be able to identify what is going wrong, right? I want to be able to know what to do when I want to reduce my cost. And as you're saying, like an example that we heard before, maybe the network cost is increasing. Maybe there is a storage cost that is increasing, or maybe there is a new application that is increasing, or somebody is doing a research project that is turning into a high cost project, right? So the ability to get that is very important. But it's not only that, it's also the predictability of if I'm still in the beginning of November, I want to know what is going to be my budget at the end of November, and I want to be very accurate, and I want to be notified immediately if I'm going to run out of budgets. Usually larger companies, what they really care about is predictability. So sometimes it's not even if the cost is a little bit higher or less, it's the fact that you are on target, that you have a budget and that people are spending according to budget. Of course, if you have a huge increase with, let's say, last year and COVID, a lot of companies had a huge increase in spend, but they also had a huge increase in revenue. So that is perfectly fine. But it's very important that you are able to do this very accurate precision there. And that's also this multi-lens view that adds a lot of value, because then you can create a definition of your organization that is more attained for, let's say, a FinOps person or a business line owner versus an head of engineering. And so we can actually budget and forecast costs for these different personas, independently of how they want to look at data. right? So that's also a very important piece. And then you bring in the discount level, right? We also keep giving you recommendations where we freshen up recommendations daily based on what's happening, right? So that you get to see what's going on and the opportunities there. And then the last pillar is the efficiency, right? How do you really have a collaboration workflow where if somebody sees a problem, it is easy to collaborate and talk to someone else. And you don't necessarily have to start sending a lot of emails. We make it very easy for you to share a screen of what you are seeing so that other people are going to see exactly the same. So that's also a very important piece there. And also we have a lot of things that are workflow driven, like as we are talking about before, the ability of detecting anomalies, be able to notify someone immediately so that you can take an action and correct that right away before it becomes a big problem.
I have a question, sorry.
Sure.
When does it make sense to employ your solution? I mean, the size of the customer. What is your smaller customer? Maybe this is a better question.
So we focus much more, of course, in cloud native or customers that have a huge cloud presence. There are a lot of companies that now have a huge cloud presence. But if you actually are a startup, right, and your cost is pretty low, the benefits that you get from getting like a savings that usually spend through a long period of time are not very important to you. So we're thinking about customers that already are significantly large, where they care about their budgets, so they are planning ahead. And it's important that the savings are a significant amount. So if you say that you're going to save...
Example, if I have a small startup and I spend 100K per month, if I can save 50%, for me, it's a lot of money.
Can I just add
to... Does it make sense to employ your solution? You know, I mean, is there an entry point for which it doesn't make sense anyway because you cost more than 50,000 per month, for example? Or is there some professional services involved, or is there something that is a barrier?
Yeah, I'm just going to add to what Pedro said. So for us, the ideal customer profile typically is 2 million or more in annual spend. Just because that's the point at which we see we can bring in a ton more value, and the complexity is enough that it matters. No doubt that $50,000 for a startup could matter to them, but then there are also basic tools. There are not that many resources typically in that scenario that can help you there. So 2 million annual spend is typically a minimum threshold as a directional marker.
Okay,
that helps.
Very good.
Hi, this is Nico here. So as a follow-up for this, I work in finance. I'm somewhat familiar with optimization companies. What is your pricing model? What I'm familiar with is a certain percentage of the money you save. Are you having the same pricing scheme, or how do you?
So our pricing model is easy. You want to make it easy and simple, and it's based on your compute number of hours. So if you actually end up saving a lot of money, that is good for you. But we want to simplify it. So it's not really by the size or the complexity. It's really how much in terms of compute hours do you have on a network. So we take a percentage of that.
So you don't look at, okay, your solution saved me $40,000. So you don't go by that number. You just go by the computing power you save.
We are very happy that you save that much money. So you want you to save as much as possible.
Resource hours, basically what we look at, which is a proxy for scale of your infrastructure, as opposed to percentage of bill, which is bill shock on bill shock, or like percentage of savings. Because at the end of the day, our sort of key perspective is that it's not just always about saving. It's also understanding, connecting the dots to your top level economics, and then making those work better. So it's usage hours. We tier you into a particular slot because we want to give you predictability within that. And we will factor in your growth in there. If it's during the year, you're going to grow, but that's how we price.
So I want to give enough time for Jeff to give a detailed demo. I just want to quickly tell you how we get started on board, right? So organizations, they already have a structure. They might be having that organizational structure in whatever tool. So we can grab that data There's also like a finance model or an allocation model. So we grab that information and we collect data then from the network. And the network can be from the cloud provider. We go to AWS, we get data from them, either from the cost as well as using CloudWatch or whatever additional insights we can get from there. The same with Microsoft Azure as well. If you're talking about containers, we can either leverage container insights that are available on the provider side, or we have an agent that runs on the container. So once we get all of that data, right, then we run it through our engine where we do the cost allocation, we do the budget and forecasting, we run the recommendations, and we look for the anomalies. And as we want to collaborate, then the collaboration happens as we have a sequence of ability to notify people with a very common types of capabilities like Slack. You can do email, PagerDuty, you can do Azure Teams as well. So we can connect with the like capabilities that allow you to connect with other people.
Excuse me, I have another question because you mentioned containers and Kubernetes multiple times. Does it mean that if I have a very large Kubernetes infrastructure on premises, I could take advantage of the same technology to optimize my infrastructure?
So we collect data from the cloud, right? If you are running it on-prem, our solution primarily is offered as a software as a service, and it runs out of the cloud. So if your cluster is it's not accessible, we would not be able to collect data and information about it.
I can add to that a little bit, Pedro, too. I think the where we don't do on-prem today, and the reason is that we don't have a cost basis for that. So we don't know how much the actual resources that you're running on-premise should cost. Where we do this in the cloud, we get the billing data from the cloud providers, so we can see the cost of each node that you're actually paying to AWS, regardless of discounts, on demand, spot, whatever it might be. So that cost basis is provided to us through that cost data gap and why we don't support on-prem today.
Yeah. Okay. And here in this slide, just to show you that as you are running capabilities or services, applications, and containers, you actually have to correlate data from multiple clusters. And to understand capacity utilization, you really get to know, and Jeff is going to give you a demo, exactly what workload and which team it belongs to, so that you can correlate that to, let's say, to a team that is running that service. So we grab all of that data. And I'm not going to spend too much on this slide. It's just really very comprehensive, but it's to say that to be able, for us to be able to really allocate cost, as Asim was saying, at 95% accuracy, we leverage all of the information that is possible. So it can be tags, it can be pod labels, it can be services, accounts, subscriptions. So there are quite a variety of things that are done. But what happens is that tagging can be a big problem. Some companies are super organized and they have tag policies where they do a very strong enforcement of tags. Not everybody is like that. There's actually a lot of the other situation where it's kind of messy. So we have this kind of ability to create these categories where we clean up and put the tags in the right place, and we can actually write tags back to the provider, and Jeff is going to show that. And then after that, we build our tree, and we give you the allocation. So one last word that I mentioned is this ability to see a multi-persona, as you have people from different parts of the organization that want to look at costs from their different lens. So we are able to do that. Here is one example where the first lens is more focused on the business function versus the second one is focused on providing you visibility from an infrastructure point of view. And these are fully customizable. It can be organized in whatever fashion that makes sense for the customer.
Yeah, I guess kind of like a build out to the no on-prem, kind of making that half step in between as opposed to the hyperscaler. Is there any integration or discussion or looking at, looking at the usage meter provided, like VMware-based service providers that are out there, or things that that are capturing that information, but are still the more traditional workloads, but they're, quote unquote, public cloud?
So it has not been our focus. Our focus is really to get people to understand cost and allocation and get to know what you can do to actually reduce your cost. We do have ability to get utilization across the board and show that utilization that can help you make decisions on, like, for example, Jeff is going to give you examples on how you look at resource, and we give recommendations on how to optimize that resource. And with the main idea being cost in a way, but it might be that you actually want to optimize for performance. Right. You have to balance between, am I getting the performance or the SLAs that I need, versus am I just thinking about cost and putting a compute instance that is saving me a lot, but it will run into problems. So we definitely can give you that ability to understand that relationship between performance and the possible impact on cost.
Okay, thank you.
But we get the data from the cloud.